it's Lisa. I just recently bought all of the Distress Oxide inks. There are 12 colors that were just released from Ranger, and these inks have different features to them depending on what you do with them. They have properties that allow you to do lots of different things with them. So I decided to make a deck showing the colors and showing each color the different ways that it's used. For example, this top one I have is Worn Lipstick, and I have it with the distressing on around the edge, stamped, just regular stamping on paper, doing nothing else to it. I have it embossed because this ink has pigment to it as well so that it stays wet and you can actually emboss. And I don't know if that's catching the light well enough for you to see, but there is an embossed look to this design. I have it direct to paper, and then where they really do fun things is when you add water to them, and that's where you get this oxide kind of look, and you can see that in the other samples as well. So I wanted to show you how to make this deck if you want to do your own sample of this or any other kinds of inks that you have. There are 12 colors, and the one that's not in here is Faded Jeans. So what I've done is taken some white cardstock. This is Nina, find my note here, Nina 110-pound exact index cardstock. I think I bought it off Office Depot. I'm going to have to look and see where this came from. But it's a very smooth cardstock, and it's what I use most of the time for this kind of thing, where I'm doing direct ink to paper, maybe putting multiple colors on there, adding the water, that kind of thing. True stamping, I might use this. I might use other kinds of papers, but when you make your deck, use whatever kind of paper you think you'll be using the most. I've cut it 2 3/4 inches wide. That way I could get 4 of these on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and I've trimmed it down to 6 inches. And to make it look more like a tag, I'm going to round 2 of the corners with 1/4 inch and 2 of the corners with 1/2 inch. 1/2 inches will be my top. I'm also going to go ahead and put a little thing there to protect the hole and make it easier to use. And you can buy these, of course, but I just do my own with a 1/2 inch circle punch and a little bit of glue. This is the Zig glue pen. Just sort of ballpark that at the top of the card. I didn't quite get it in the center, but we've got a pretty good card there. Now, let's do our different samples with the Faded Jeans colors. When I did all of these, I printed out the words on stickers, these normal little address labels that you get, like Avery address labels. I did 2 per sticker, and I did 1 of them on the end of the ink. Here's the one for Worn Lipstick. So I printed 2 like I have here, and then I just cut one side and put it on the ink. I messed up Faded Jeans, and so I had to redo it, and then I remembered I have a typewriter. I keep forgetting that I have a typewriter because I haven't had it all that long. It was my dad's, and he let me have it. So I just redid that one on the typewriter. It's why it looks a little bit different. I'm taking some of the ink and stamping it on this Faded Jeans label so that I'll have that color showing on the end of my ink pad. Okay. Now, this is going to need to dry for a couple of minutes because this ink does stay wet so that you can do your embossing, which is to our advantage because we're going to do some embossing. Find my stamp. Okay. I'm using clear embossing powder. This either came from Stampin' Up! Or one of the craft stores. I think I ran out of the Stampin' Up! Kind, and I'm using one from a craft store. Just need plain old clear embossing powder for this technique. You could also probably use some of the sparkly embossing powders. I haven't tried those with it yet. And then quickly, while it's wet, sprinkle your clear embossing powder over that and heat set it. So now we're getting this really pretty look with embossing. If you like the real true colors of these inks, just emboss it. That's the best way to get that pretty true color. And I hadn't had pigment inks in so long. Mine had dried up and I hadn't bought any, but these are wonderful because they have both the pigment properties and then they dry and you can use them, of course, as regular inks, and the magic happens when you add the water, as Tim Holtz says when he promotes these inks. All right, I'm going to take this label, cut it in half, and I'm going to use half of it to label my container here. And the other half of it for this tag. And I've got some blue ink on my hands probably from this label thing. All right, so that will show me the name of it and that it's one of the Oxide inks. Another property of these inks is the ability to do just regular distressing with them. So you can take a sponge or your distressing tools from Rangers. I just use these sponges from Stampin' Up, and you can go around the edges like you would distress. Now, I have not done that for all of my tags, because what I find with this kind of distressing on the edges is I'm probably not going to be doing it on white paper. I'm going to be using designer paper or book paper, and it's because of the color of the paper, it's going to look a little different. So with distressing like that, I usually have to just test an area of my project that won't be that visible with the distressing for any ink, just to see how it's going to look. So that's not a real advantage to me. The other two things, though, I definitely want to do to this. So let's just take a scrap piece of paper here, and we're going to do some ink to paper. This dries kind of a chalky look. It looks sort of like acrylic paint that's not a gloss acrylic paint, just a plain acrylic paint when it dries. Scrap piece of paper, and I'm putting that in the middle, so half of it will get spritzed with water and half of it won't. And when you spritz it with water, it starts to do that oxide kind of look, and that wasn't a real heavy spritz. You could put more water on there and you get, you know, an even different look. But this is going to show me on my sample what it looks like in the Oxide, plain direct to paper, embossed, regular stamping, and then in this case I did a little distressing around the edge. So I'll add this one once everything is dried on it into my deck, and I have all of my colors now, and it'll be really easy for me to see what colors are going to work well with my project, especially if I'm doing scrapbooking and I'm matching up to designer paper. So that's my deck that I'm using for samples for distress ink. You could do this for any inks that you had. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you'll check out my other videos. I should have some videos coming along using these distress inks. I've made the investment, and I definitely want to use them because I'm just very excited about these colors and how pretty they all look. And before I leave you, I'm going to give you a little close-up of each of the colors. This is Worn Lipstick, Fired Brick, and when you add the water, this one, the darker the color, the more that oxide looks, even when you haven't added water to it. Spiced Marmalade, Fossilized Amber is one of my favorite colors in the paint, and it kind of turns a little bit of a peachy color when you add the water. Peeled Paint, I love green, and maybe that's why this one's my favorite, where the water changes the color on that. You get a little bit of a bluish tint to or teal tint to the peeled paint. Cracked Pistachio, Broken China, and I think the Wilted Violet look the most true to me in color. They don't really seem to change color as they dry or add water. And then this is Ice Spruce. And the other two neutrals are Walnut Stain and Vintage Photo. And then here we have Faded Jeans, which isn't quite dry. It will dry a little bit lighter than this. Thanks for joining me.